I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Dick Durbin responded Tuesday on the Senate floor to the bombshell leak of a Supreme Court opinion on Roe v. Wade. The opinion revealed that the highest court in the land might strike down federal abortion rights. Durbin said, quote, "Women in America may soon live in a country where they have fewer rights than their parents and grandparents." Let's listen in to more from the Illinois Democrat.
Madam President,
The Majority Whip.
are we in a quorum call?
We are not.
Thank you, Madam President. Americans across the country today woke up to a rare occurrence in the history of our American democracy. The highest court in our land is preparing to eliminate a federally protected constitutional right, a woman's right to choose. I'm an amateur historian, but I can't think of a precedent in history where the Supreme Court has taken away a constitutional right after it's been in place for 50 years. Women in America may soon live in a country where they have fewer rights than their parents and grandparents. Let me be clear. The leak of the majority draft opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organizations is a breach of the court's confidentiality deliberations. But the draft opinion, which has been authenticated by the Chief Justice, is very real. There was a peculiar political event this afternoon. Senator McConnell, the Republican leader, who has focused more of his energy and efforts on reshaping the federal judiciary to reflect his political point of view, was virtually silent on the issue of this Alito draft opinion on the Dobbs case. He couldn't be pinned down as to whether he would acknowledge it or even say something good about it. Supposedly, it was the answer to his political prayer. He went so far in trying to reach this goal as to protect a vacancy on the Supreme Court for almost 10 months. Anton Scalia died while Barack Obama was still president in his last year of his second term. And Senator McConnell made the argument that he did not have the authority, since he was a lame duck president, in Senator McConnell's words, to fill the vacancy. So the Supreme Court was there with 8 members for 10 months until Senator McConnell's political prayer was answered again, and Donald Trump was elected president and could appoint a justice of Senator McConnell's political liking. So he has been very successful in his approach to filling vacancies on the U.S. Supreme Court with people who agree with his political philosophy. Now, one of them, Justice Alito, is about to hand down an opinion which eliminates Roe versus Wade, a position which is consistent with Senator McConnell's belief that's been stated on the floor many times. And yet, when he was asked today whether he was in favor of this opinion, he refused to even answer. He wanted to focus on who leaked this opinion. Well, of course, that's an important question. The court's working on it right now with the Chief Justice turning as U.S. Marshal on the case. But Senator McConnell insisted on avoiding even taking a position on this draft opinion that has now been spread across America. It makes no sense at all. Women across America are grappling with the very real concern, and yes, you could say fear, that they may lose access to reproductive freedom and choice in a matter of weeks. If true, this decision will end a 50-year guarantee that reproductive rights are protected by our Constitution. If this radical decision becomes the law of the land, it would deny tens of millions of Americans their bodily autonomy. In an instant, abortion would be rendered illegal in more than a dozen states. In this land of liberty, the government has no business interfering with a woman's right to her own reproductive health care. It's her right to choose, plain and simple. But for the past several decades, the far right has fought relentlessly to eliminate this constitutional right. They've waged a harsh campaign to, in some instances, actually punish the women seeking abortions. Here's what I'm describing. In Texas last year, lawmakers passed a law that has turned bounty hunters loose on anyone that even helps a woman receive an abortion. And that Mississippi law that the court's poised to uphold, it makes no exception for women seeking abortion in the case of rape or incest. At a certain point, you have to ask, what is the real goal here? These restrictive laws won't stop people from getting abortions. We know that from history. They only make the procedure dangerously unsafe and in some cases prohibitively expensive for low-income Americans. Women's lives are literally at stake. Furthermore, we have hardly begun to reckon with the consequences of this decision when it comes to other fundamental liberties. I read Justice Alito's draft opinion. It's hard for me to describe it in a few words, but when it comes to issues as fundamental as privacy and personal choice, Justice Alito takes a pretty harsh point of view. He acknowledges the cases that are often cited in the name of privacy, such as Griswold. I can vaguely remember that before the Griswold decision in the 1960s, the decision of selling contraceptives was subject to strict state regulation. And in many states, they prohibited the sale of any forms of contraception. It's hard for America to even believe that when you see forms of contraception being advertised on television these days. But there was a time in the 50s and before when state regulation prevailed. Griswold versus Connecticut, a Supreme Court case, took a look at the regulation in Connecticut and said it's fundamentally wrong. We believe that individuals have a right of privacy to make their own decision on contraception. That was a privacy right, which I respect, and yet, if you're careful, read every single word, you'll never find the word privacy in the Constitution. The Supreme Court found a right to privacy by combining the rights in several other different amendments. That wouldn't be good enough for Justice Alito on the basis of this draft opinion we've been given. He said since he can't find the word abortion in the Constitution, he doesn't believe there's a right to it. And he goes on to compare it to privacy rights, like the one I just described in Griswold versus Connecticut. And he said that is just a matter of saying privacy is your right to choose your own personal lifestyle, or words to that effect. Well, it's more than that. It gets down to the fundamentals. And if you're going to make a decision on something as basic as a family, a husband and wife deciding how many children and when they would have children, it really is one of the most basic things when you define freedom in this country. But that's not the way Justice Alito finds it in the Dobbs decision. If we apply Justice Alito's reasoning behind this draft decision to other rights, the implications are staggering. The Supreme Court could turn back the clock on a whole host of civil liberties. What's next? The return of state bans on contraception, bans on same-sex marriage, bans on the permissible conduct of LGBTQ people in a different sexual orientation situation. All of that could be on the table. Now that Supreme Court has confirmed that this draft opinion is authentic, the members of this Senate cannot delay. We need to hold a vote codifying the right to abortion in law. Let's show the American people where each senator stands. Senator McConnell ducked the question at a press conference today. I still don't understand why, but he can't duck the vote. We're going to make sure that there is a vote and that his members, as well as the senator, have an opportunity to express themselves on the record. Will we allow our children to inherit a nation that is less free than the one their parents grew up in? That's the question which presents itself to the Senate. And now, Mr. President, I ask consent that the following remarks be placed at a separate place in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Last month, on the evening of April 5th, a drone whizzed through the skies of Shanghai, China. The city had been shut down for nearly a week following a recent uptick in COVID. China's government had forced Shanghai's nearly 26 million residents into a strict lockdown. Nobody was allowed to leave their home, not even to buy groceries or medicine. By the evening of April 5th, many residents were running out of food. Panic was starting to set in. In one housing complex, the residents began shouting from their windows, demanding that the government provide them with the basics. As they shouted, the drone stopped flying and began hovering over their housing complex. It blinked a white flashing light as a robotic voice issued a command that would send chills down the spine of anyone. The voice instructed the residents of that Shanghai apartment complex to comply with the lockdown and then said, "Control your soul's desire for freedom." As government drones patrol Shanghai's skies, robotic dogs are patrolling the city's empty streets, barking commands to citizens to, quote, "remain civilized." These methods of enforcement and control did not appear out of thin air. For years, the Chinese government has poured its treasure and talent into developing next-generation technology, like dystopian drones, robotic dogs, and the most sophisticated surveillance apparatus in the world. Technology, of course, by itself is neither good nor bad. The same technology can be used to advance freedom and democracy as they use to suppress it. For instance, facial recognition technology, it's built into our smartphones to protect our sensitive data. In China, this technology is also used to monitor their citizenry and tabulate their, quote, social credit scores. The Chinese government also uses artificial intelligence, AI, for the troves of data it collects on its own citizens every day, particularly on ethnic minorities like the Uyghurs, against whom the Chinese government is committing human rights abuses. Scientific and technological innovation are critical to America's future economic prosperity and standard of living, but innovation is also critical to our national security and to the future of our country. Who do we want to take the lead in shaping the future? The United States and the other democracies of the world, or authoritarian states like China and Russia? China's technological clout is the product of decades of investment. This chart shows the annual growth in research and development expenditures since 1995. Note that leading the pack is China, Korea second, Taiwan third, Israel 4, United States 5. From 1995 to 2018, China increased its investment in research and development by more than 15% on average, reaching $463 billion in 2018. Since then, they've accelerated at pace. China's investments were nearly double the increases seen in Korea, which had the second highest R&D. During that same period, America grew by less than 5%, leaving it only $89 billion ahead of China. Last December, a report from Harvard warned that China is now a full-spectrum peer competitor when it comes to advanced technology like AI and quantum computing. For years, I've been working on the Senate Appropriations Committee to address this gap, to boost federal investments in science, technology, and medical R&D. For America to remain the scientific and technological leader of the world, we need now to act significantly to increase investment. The U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, or USICA, will enable us to make these investments. It's a down payment on a more secure America. USICA will mark our nation's largest investment in science and technology since Apollo 11. It will strengthen our national security in the age of cyber warfare. It will harness American innovation to drive economic growth. It includes a provision I led with Senator Shaheen that requires the U.S. to increase exports by 200% to African, Latin American, Caribbean markets where China is already making considerable investments. This provision is going to help American workers. And importantly, USICA will also reinvigorate American manufacturing by bringing microchip production back to our shores. It devotes $50 billion to expand our U.S. microchip industry, a critical component in our future economy. Microchips are computer chips, the small pieces of silicon that power nearly everything around us, from smartphones to appliances like refrigerators and microwaves. Even our cars have dozens of microchips. Right now, there's a serious global shortage. It's disrupted virtually every industry. It's leading to higher prices for all types of products. America actually invented the microchip, and we used to make them here too. Nearly 40% of the world's supplies. But we let that manufacture and production get away. Now we've got to bring it home. Today we produce only 10% of the world's supply of microchips. Outsourcing microchip production has massive consequences for our economy. When a disaster like COVID hits, causes a microchip factory in Malaysia to halt production, American businesses and consumers suffer. We become dangerously dependent on China and other competitors when it comes to securing our supply chain for microchips. With USICA, we can rebuild America's manufacturing and solve supply chain shortages. It will incentivize companies to hire more American workers, make their products right here at home. In addition to shoring up America's supply chain, USICA will help protect American consumers. The House has a counterpart bill, the America Competes Act. Including in that is something known as the Informed Consumers Act. I introduced this with Senator Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, and is led in the House by Congresswoman Schakowsky and Bill Arakis. This bill will help prevent counterfeit goods from China and stolen goods from our retail stores by being hawked by shady sellers on online marketplaces. It was 10 years ago or more. Home Depot came to see me. They said, "We've got a problem." I said, "What is it?" And they said, "Our drills are being sold on an internet marketplace." I said, "What's wrong with that?" They said, "We're not selling them." And they are the drills which are made in our sole manufacturing facility in China. Somewhere after they are made, they are stolen. And someone's stealing enough of them that they can offer them for sale on the internet. I said, "Well, that explains a lot of what's going on. Go into a drugstore today and try to buy a deodorant, and you'll find it's under lock and key. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, that only cost a couple bucks. Why is it under lock and key? Because it's so frequently stolen in bulk. Whether it's Home Depot's drill or the deodorants sold at Walgreens, people are stealing them in volume, not for personal use or personal sale, but because there are gangs now that are peddling these goods on the internet. And so we put together a bill, Senator Cassidy and myself, that prevents these counterfeit goods and stolen goods from being sold without disclosing the name of the seller. We had some resistance from some of these internet marketplaces. They didn't want to disclose the name of the seller. We told them, that seller is selling stolen goods on your marketplace. Well, that's their business. They have a right to confidentiality. It took a long time to persuade them otherwise. Our bill is being supported by a broad coalition: the National Association of Manufacturers, the Fraternal Order of Police, AFL-CIO, and Consumer Reports. I think it's about time. You look at these gangs that are running in and doing all this shoplifting in massive amounts and pouring it into garbage bags. It isn't for them to go out and sit on the sidewalk and try to sell what they've stolen. They've got a syndicate, a gangland operation, which filters all these goods into an internet marketplace. Now, if we can start to identify these sellers of these illegal and stolen goods, perhaps we can start to bring justice to this situation. Finally, USICA is going to make crucial investments in America's capacity to innovate and pioneer groundbreaking technology. It authorizes billions of dollars for the National Science Foundation to help America's scientists unlock the potential of AI, quantum computing, and other advanced technology. These investments will make a difference. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and Dr. Ponch, who heads up the National Science Foundation, made a visit. I'm proud to report that many universities in our state do federal research, but the University of Illinois may do more than most, and they receive many grants from the National Science Foundation. We welcome the director of that Science Foundation to Illinois, and he's made a point of looking at the projects that were being funded. I can't even start to describe to you what some of them are, but I'm just a liberal arts lawyer, and I heard these descriptions about the next generation of computing and technology. Let me tell you about one of the projects which I did understand. It was led by Professor Girish Chowdhury, along with the CEO of his company, Chinmay Soman. The project they've started is called Earth Sense. Picture this, if you will. Their goal is to combine machine learning with smart agriculture to build robots that our farmers can use to grow crops more efficiently and improve their environment. So I watched their little robots go to work. They're powered by batteries, and if you can picture a cornfield, and we've got a lot of them in Illinois, these robots go between the rows of corn. And while they're going down rows, they are gathering data and information. Moisture in the ground, pictures of the soybeans and corn above them to determine whether or not they're being successful and most productive, And at the same time, they are spreading seeds for a cover crop that's going to follow the harvesting of the corn. They are guided remotely by computer, and that is the future of farming, I believe. I think getting a picture of a farmer on a tractor is something you want to hang on to as a souvenir. The farms of the future are going to be managed by autonomous machines, robots, and the like, and it's going to be a lot more efficient. It kind of breaks the hearts of my farmers to talk in these terms, but that's the reality, and we'd better be on top of it. EarthSense at the University of Illinois is a good illustration. Every state's home to institutions that support researchers working. Let's give them the tools and resources they need. If we want a future in which flying drones overhead demand that hungry citizens suppress their soul's desire for freedom, or a future in which robots help grow more food and feed the planet, which nations and which values shape the world's future will be informed by the decisions we make in Congress and in Washington. Let's send this competitiveness package to President Biden's desk and invest in America. Mr. President, I yield the floor.